What happens when the family that once called you a burden suddenly begs for your help? Evelyn chose herself, and her answer changed everything. What followed left her children wishing they'd never underestimated her. Evelyn had always believed her greatest strength was her willingness to help others. As the matriarch of the Davies family, she'd spent decades putting her husband and children's needs before her own, nursing them through illness, celebrating their victories, and stitching the seams of every torn family bond. Her house was the gathering place for every holiday, her hands the first to reach out when someone needed comfort, a loan, or a hot meal. But after her husband Harold's passing, things changed. Her daughter Lisa began dropping by less, always in a hurry, answering Evelyn's questions with clipped replies. Her son Martin, who lived just a few blocks away, stopped calling unless he needed to borrow tools or ask for a ride. Even her grandchildren seemed to outgrow her, their visits dwindling from weekends to holidays, then to the occasional birthday card. The house, once bursting with voices and laughter, grew silent and cold. It was a Sunday in late autumn when everything truly shifted. Evelyn prepared her famous roast chicken, expecting her family for dinner. She polished the good silver, set the table, and arranged fresh flowers, humming old tunes to herself. But the hours dragged on, and one by one, the cancellations rolled in. Lisa texted that she was overwhelmed with work, Martin called to say he was under the weather, and the grandkids never even replied. Evelyn sat at the table alone, picking at her food while the clock ticked loudly in the quiet room. Later that week, she overheard Lisa and Martin arguing in the hallway. The door was cracked open, their voices low but urgent. "She's just too much these days," Lisa whispered. "We can't keep checking in every time she calls," Martin replied. "It's like she needs us for everything." "Maybe it's time we talked about putting her somewhere she can get the help she needs," Lisa said. Evelyn's heart pounded as she realized they were talking about her, about sending her away, about being a burden. That night, Evelyn barely slept. Her mind replayed every sacrifice, every sleepless night she'd spent nursing them as children, every family gathering she'd hosted, every time she'd given up her own dreams for their comfort. She felt invisible, unwanted, and discarded. When morning came, she stared at her own reflection, wondering when her value had become so easily forgotten. But even in her sorrow, Evelyn was stubborn. She refused to fade quietly into the background. She started to withdraw, she stopped offering to babysit, stopped dropping off casseroles, stopped answering every call for favors. Instead, she invested in herself for the first time in decades. She joined a book club at the library, took up painting at the senior center, and signed up for Tai Chi classes in the park. Soon, she made friends: Barbara, a retired nurse with a sharp sense of humor, Oscar, who organized chess games at the cafe, and Judith, who invited Evelyn to help coordinate a winter fundraiser for the animal shelter. Days filled with purpose and laughter replaced the loneliness she once felt. Evelyn discovered a part of herself she'd forgotten, a woman who loved to learn, laugh, and be needed for who she was, not just what she could do for others. She decorated her home with her own art, hosted her new friends for tea and homemade bread, and for the first time, felt free. Meanwhile, Lisa and Martin grew frustrated by Evelyn's distance. They called, asking for help with errands or childcare, but Evelyn was often busy or politely declined. At first, they complained to each other, convinced she was being unreasonable. "She's punishing us," Martin grumbled. "She's just trying to make us feel guilty," Lisa insisted. But as the weeks passed, their tone changed. Martin's car broke down, Lisa's youngest caught the flu, and neither could find anyone willing to step in at a moment's notice. Their busy lives began to unravel at the edges. On a rainy Thursday evening, Lisa appeared at Evelyn's door, her face drawn with exhaustion. "Mom, could you please watch the kids for a few hours? I have to work late and my sitter canceled." Evelyn smiled, apologetic but firm. "I'm sorry, Lisa, I have plans with my painting group tonight. Maybe next time." Martin followed soon after, asking for a loan to cover a repair bill. Evelyn explained that she was helping fund the animal shelter fundraiser and couldn't spare the money at the moment. Martin looked stunned, unable to hide his disappointment. Word spread through the family. Evelyn was busy, unavailable, living her own life. For the first time, Lisa and Martin felt the weight of responsibility shift back onto their own shoulders. But Evelyn, far from feeling vindictive, found joy in her newfound independence. She reveled in the respect and affection she received from her friends, from her Tai Chi instructor who praised her focus, to Barbara who declared, you're the life of every meeting." Evelyn's world had grown larger even as her family's grip on her had loosened. As the weeks turned to months, Evelyn became the go-to organizer for community events and a fixture at local gatherings. She was busy, fulfilled, and, finally, valued. She still loved her family, but she loved herself enough not to be taken for granted ever again. Evelyn's new life took on a steady rhythm, far different from her past of constant caregiving. Mornings began with walks in the park, where she practiced Tai Chi with Judith and Oscar, their movements slow and graceful beneath autumn trees. They often followed class with coffee and laughter at the cafe. Evelyn looked forward to these gatherings, relishing her freedom from her family's constant demands. At the library's book club, Evelyn found herself drawn into passionate debates over novels and memoirs, her mind alive with ideas she'd almost forgotten she possessed. When Barbara proposed they organize a monthly literary tea, Evelyn jumped at the chance to help, designing invitations and baking her famous scones for the launch. The event was such a hit that the local paper wrote a feature, including a photo of Evelyn beaming beside her new friends. The winter fundraiser for the animal shelter soon took center stage. Evelyn devoted hours to crafting decorations, soliciting auction items from local businesses, and even sewing dog bandanas with Judith. The event became the talk of the town, drawing an enthusiastic crowd and raising enough money to support the shelter through spring. Oscar presented Evelyn with a bouquet of lilies, the mayor congratulated her personally, and the shelter director called her the heart and soul of our community. Meanwhile, Lisa and Martin's lives became increasingly chaotic. Lisa struggled to balance work and family without her mother's help. When her sitter canceled again, Lisa missed an important meeting and faced her boss's disappointment. She called Evelyn, voice trembling with stress, but Evelyn gently explained she was busy helping prepare for the fundraiser. Lisa's frustration simmered. She'd always relied on her mother's willingness to drop everything at a moment's notice. Martin, too, faced setbacks. Without Evelyn's steady support, small crises became major headaches. When his furnace broke down in the middle of a cold snap, he scrambled to find a repairman and ended up paying double for a last-minute fix. The children grew restless. Evelyn's absence meant no more impromptu after-school visits, homemade cookies, or game nights. They missed her warmth, but were unsure how to bridge the new distance. The siblings grew desperate. Lisa reached out to her mother's friends, hoping for an inside track. She showed up at the library one afternoon, interrupting the literary tea, hoping to pull Evelyn aside. "Can't you please help just this once?" she pleaded. Evelyn smiled sympathetically, but stood her ground. "I love you, Lisa, but I've made commitments I can't break. The girls at the shelter are counting on me. I hope you understand." Martin tried a different approach, inviting Evelyn for dinner at his house. He prepared her favorite stew, hoping the comfort of the past would soften her resolve. The meal was pleasant, but when he asked her to help watch his kids every Friday night, Evelyn shook her head. "I have a life of my own now, Martin. I'm happy to visit, but I can't commit to a schedule." As winter deepened, Evelyn found herself busier than ever. She was elected co-chair of the Senior Center's Activity Committee, began taking art classes at the community college, and even started dating an old friend from church, Henry, who admired her independence. Henry became a frequent guest at Evelyn's gatherings, his quiet humor and gentle encouragement a welcome addition to her life. Lisa and Martin, meanwhile, struggled to adjust. Their children noticed the changes too, missing Evelyn's special touch at birthdays and holidays. When Martin's daughter asked, "Why doesn't Grandma come over anymore?" Martin felt a pang of regret, realizing too late how much they'd taken her for granted. But Evelyn was not vengeful. She sent cards on birthdays, offered help when she could, and always answered with kindness. Yet she was careful to maintain her boundaries, protecting her newfound sense of worth. At the year's end, the Senior Center hosted a gala, honoring volunteers who had gone above and beyond. Evelyn, radiant in a sapphire dress, was presented with an award for her service. The room erupted in applause. Her friends hugged her tightly, and Henry toasted her with a smile. To Evelyn, an inspiration to us all. That night, Evelyn returned home, heart full and eyes shining. She finally understood. She was not a burden. She was a blessing. And for the first time in years, she was truly living for herself. The new year brought with it a fresh layer of snow and, for Evelyn, an ever-expanding calendar. She found herself in high demand, not just for her organization skills and warm spirit, but for her wisdom and genuine kindness. Her art class exhibited their paintings at the community college, with Evelyn's winter landscape taking pride of place. She began teaching a beginners group, guiding others through the strokes and blending of color that had brought her such quiet joy. At the senior center, her role as activity committee co-chair brought a sense of responsibility and pride. She led brainstorming sessions for spring events, mentored newer members, and was invited by the center's director to give a talk on redefining retirement. Evelyn spoke from the heart, sharing her journey from invisible caregiver to vibrant community leader. Applause filled the hall. Afterward, several women thanked her for inspiring them to seek more from life. Meanwhile, Evelyn's relationship with Henry blossomed. Their courtship was gentle but full of laughter and discovery. Henry taught her to play chess. Evelyn taught him how to waltz. They took in local concerts, picnicked in the park on clear days, and shared secrets over late-night tea. For the first time in decades, Evelyn allowed herself to be cherished, not for her utility, but for her company. Lisa and Martin's frustration deepened as winter thawed to spring. Lisa, her career more demanding than ever, felt the weight of responsibility press harder. She found herself rushing from school to work to home, collapsing each night with barely a moment to herself. Martin juggled his children's school schedules, sports practices, and his own mounting bills, missing the convenience and comfort of his mother's constant support. Small crises mounted. Martin's son sprained his ankle at soccer practice, and Martin was forced to leave work early to pick him up. Lisa's youngest developed a cough that lingered for weeks. With no one to watch her daughter, Lisa missed an important client presentation. The siblings vented their frustrations to one another, each secretly wishing for the ease of their old routines. Desperation drove them to plan a family dinner, something they hadn't done in months. They called Evelyn with invitations and promises of her favorite meal, hoping nostalgia would work where pleas had failed. Evelyn accepted graciously, bringing Henry along. The meal was pleasant but formal, conversation polite but shallow. When Martin and Lisa finally raised the question, "Mom, couldn't you spend more time with us? The kids really need you," Evelyn's answer was gentle but unyielding. "I love you all, and I'm always here if you need advice or just a listening ear. But I have my own life now. I can't give up what I've found to fit back into the same old role." The silence at the table was thick. Lisa stared at her plate. Martin nodded, frustrated but unable to argue. Henry squeezed Evelyn's hand beneath the table, a quiet show of support. After dinner, Evelyn said her goodbyes and left with Henry, heart heavy but proud. On the ride home, Henry turned to her. "You did the right thing. You've given them enough for a lifetime. It's their turn now." In the weeks that followed, Evelyn doubled down on her commitments to herself. She planned a spring art exhibit, organized a charity walk for the animal shelter, and taught a baking class at the senior center. The gratitude and friendship she received filled her days with warmth and meaning. One afternoon, Evelyn returned home to find a bouquet of flowers on her doorstep, sent by Barbara and Judith, with a card reading, "For reminding us all that life begins again when you choose yourself." Evelyn smiled, placing the flowers in her favorite vase. Her life, once defined by the needs of others, now belonged fully to her. That evening, as Evelyn reflected on all she'd accomplished, she felt a peace she hadn't known in years. Her journey had been hard one, but she knew she would never again allow herself to be treated as a burden. Her family could adjust or not, but she would keep moving forward, confident in her own worth. Spring brought longer days and a renewed sense of energy to Evelyn's world. Her commitments multiplied. She led a team in the city's annual charity walk, taught twice-weekly baking classes at the senior center, and hosted art workshops for both beginners and seasoned painters. The local paper ran another feature on her community work, dubbing her the Heart of Silverwood. Her social circle flourished. Barbara and Judith, loyal as ever, became her partners in organizing a Mother's Day luncheon for women who, like Evelyn, had devoted their lives to caring for others. The event filled the community hall with laughter, music, and the aroma of fresh-baked scones. Evelyn gave a short speech about rediscovering oneself later in life. She saw women nodding, wiping away tears, their gratitude a balm she hadn't known she needed. Henry continued to be a steadfast companion, his quiet affection a constant presence. He surprised Evelyn with a garden plot at the local park, and together they planted tomatoes, sunflowers, and rows of lavender. As they worked side by side, neighbors often stopped to chat, drawn by Evelyn's warmth and Henry's easy humor. Their partnership, built on respect and friendship, became the envy of many. Lisa and Martin's challenges deepened as summer approached. Martin's work cut his hours, straining his finances further. Lisa's company downsized, forcing her into a less flexible role. With fewer resources and no backup, their stress levels rose. Martin called, voice tight, asking if Evelyn could watch his kids during the week. Evelyn explained that she was leading a painting camp, but offered to help find a sitter through her growing network. Martin declined, irritation barely hidden. Lisa, too, tried to reconnect. She stopped by one evening, children in tow, and lingered on Evelyn's porch as the kids ran through the garden. "It feels different here, Mom," Lisa admitted. "The house is happier." Evelyn smiled, inviting her inside for tea. The conversation turned gentle. Lisa confided her fears about work, her guilt over losing touch, and her worries about the future. Evelyn listened with compassion, offering support but not surrendering her new boundaries. "I miss the way things used to be," Lisa said softly. "So do I," Evelyn replied. "But I don't miss being invisible." Word of Evelyn's success and independence reached old friends from her past. She reconnected with former colleagues and childhood neighbors, building a network of people who valued her for more than her role as mother or grandmother. Invitations poured in, bridge games, potlucks, trips to museums and gardens. In early June, Evelyn hosted her own birthday party, a first in many years. She invited everyone who had made her life bright: friends from art class, volunteers from the shelter, her book club, Henry, Barbara, Judith, and, yes, Lisa and Martin and their children. The house filled with music and chatter, laughter spilling out onto the lawn. Martin watched from the edge of the crowd, struck by the breadth of his mother's world. Lisa found herself surprised at how welcome she felt among strangers who spoke of Evelyn with such affection. After the guests left and the sun dipped below the horizon, Evelyn sat with Henry and her friends, savoring the sense of belonging. She knew the journey from burden to blessing hadn't been easy. It had required pain, distance, and no small amount of courage. But looking around her now, she felt a quiet certainty that she had done the right thing. Her life, once so narrowly defined, had become a wide, sunlit path. For the first time, she looked forward to every step. Summer settled over Silverwood, painting the town in gold and green. Evelyn's garden flourished, and with Henry's encouragement, she entered her first local gardening contest. Her sunflowers towered over the fence, her tomatoes grew plump and red, and neighbors often stopped by just to admire the view. For Evelyn, the contest was less about winning and more about celebrating her newfound sense of joy and accomplishment. The senior center thrived under her leadership. Evelyn organized a family fun day, inviting community members of all ages for games, workshops, and a shared meal. Children painted rocks and raced potato sacks, while older adults taught skills ranging from knitting to chess. Evelyn's homemade lemonade was the highlight, drawing praise and smiles from every corner. The event not only raised money for the center's programs but also strengthened the bonds between generations. Martin and Lisa remained on the periphery, watching Evelyn's transformation with a mix of admiration and bewilderment. Martin found himself struggling with the demands of single parenthood. He made several attempts to reach out: texts, missed calls, quick invitations for coffee, but Evelyn often replied that she was busy or away at an event. When they did meet, she greeted him warmly, offered practical advice, but never stepped back into her old role as a last-minute savior. Lisa faced her own turning point. One afternoon, after a particularly hard day at work, she came to Evelyn's garden with her children, hoping to reconnect. Evelyn welcomed them, giving the kids baskets to pick berries and telling Lisa about her latest art project. The conversation turned to boundaries and respect. Evelyn explained, gently but firmly, how much she valued her new independence. Lisa listened, this time really hearing her mother for the first time in years. "I just never realized how much I relied on you," Lisa admitted. "I'm sorry for taking you for granted." Evelyn hugged her daughter, forgiveness easy now that her own cup was full. "I love you, Lisa. I always will. But I needed to learn to love myself, too." Meanwhile, Evelyn's friendship with Henry grew into a quiet partnership. They attended local concerts, volunteered together at the animal shelter, and spent long evenings sharing stories on Evelyn's porch. Barbara and Judith, ever her closest friends, teased that Henry had brought a twinkle to her eye, and Evelyn would only laugh, grateful for their warmth and camaraderie. In July, Evelyn was invited to speak at the city's Voices of Experience Forum, where she told her story to a packed auditorium. She described her journey from self-sacrifice to self-fulfillment, her voice steady as she urged others to put themselves first sometimes. The audience applauded, and after the event, several people approached her to thank her for giving them courage to change. Summer rolled on with more art classes, bake sales, and neighborhood potlucks. Evelyn's calendar was filled not with obligations, but with choices, each day shaped by what brought her joy. She sent birthday cards and gifts to her grandchildren, always signed with love, but left the door open for them to come to her. As the season drew to a close, Evelyn sat on her porch with Henry, watching the sun set over the garden they'd built together. She felt a gentle pride in all she'd achieved and the life she'd created, a life where she was no longer a background character, but the author of her own story. That evening, as she wrote in her journal, Evelyn reflected on the difference between being needed and being valued. She knew she'd never go back to the old way. She was living proof that, sometimes, the greatest help you can give your family is to show them how to stand on their own. August's long, bright days brought new adventures for Evelyn. The city gardening contest drew near, and she spent quiet hours tending her plot, guided by Henry's patient advice and the cheerful help of neighborhood children who'd adopted her as their garden grandma. The day of the judging, her sunflowers and tomatoes drew a crowd, and though she didn't take first prize, she was awarded a ribbon for community spirit, a recognition that left her grinning for days. At the senior center, Evelyn led the planning for the Autumn Arts Fair. She taught newcomers to paint pumpkins, organized a quilt raffle with Barbara and Judith, and secured a donation from a local bakery for the event. The fair, held on a sunny September weekend, filled the center with color and music. It was a testament to how much the community now relied on her creativity and vision. Lisa and Martin continued to feel the consequences of Evelyn's independence. Martin called more frequently, hoping to catch Evelyn on a free afternoon. When he did, their conversations were honest and, at times, emotional. "I know I let you down, Mom," he confessed one evening, sitting on Evelyn's porch as cicadas sang in the twilight. "I just thought you'd always be there to pick up the pieces." Evelyn listened quietly. "I was always there, Martin. But now I need to be here for myself, too. I'm happy to help where I can, but I can't carry everything anymore." Martin nodded, grateful and chastened. He brought his children by to visit more often, not to drop them off, but to spend time as a family, learning new recipes from Evelyn or helping with small repairs in her garden. The kids loved their new grandma, and Martin began to see Evelyn not as a resource to be tapped, but as a woman with her own vibrant life. Lisa, after her candid talk with Evelyn, started therapy and began rebuilding her own support system. She invited her mother to join her and the children for a picnic in the park, and for the first time in years, it felt like an equal relationship. Lisa began to seek her mother's advice not for crisis management, but for inspiration and honest conversation. Evelyn's circle of friends grew, and so did her connection with Henry. They attended an outdoor concert series, cheered for their favorite team at a baseball game, and worked side by side at the food bank's autumn drive. With each passing week, their bond deepened into a quiet, unwavering partnership, one that brought Evelyn real happiness. In early fall, Evelyn was asked to lead a panel discussion at the City Council about aging with purpose. She spoke eloquently about the freedom that came from reclaiming her time and energy. "Our value doesn't diminish because we're older," she told the crowd. "We just need to remember it ourselves first." As the leaves turned, Evelyn realized that, although her family still struggled at times, their dynamic had changed for the better. They now saw her as someone to be respected, not rescued or relied upon without limit. One quiet evening, Evelyn hosted a small dinner for her closest friends and family. Lisa brought dessert, Martin and his kids helped set the table, and Henry made a toast, "To Evelyn, for teaching all of us the true meaning of strength." That night, Evelyn reflected on the journey she'd made, not out of bitterness, but out of necessity. She knew now that setting boundaries hadn't pushed her family away, it had brought them closer, on new, healthier terms. Her world, once small and shadowed by sacrifice, now stretched as wide as her dreams allowed. The crisp air of autumn energized Evelyn as she took on her most ambitious project yet, launching a Generations in Bloom festival, bringing together local schools, seniors, and families to celebrate community resilience. She rallied sponsors, designed workshops with Barbara and Judith, and coordinated volunteers from every corner of Silverwood. The festival became a sensation. Kids learned to paint and plant, seniors shared stories on a storytelling stage, and the town square brimmed with music, art, and laughter. Evelyn was everywhere, welcoming guests, introducing speakers, even helping a lost child find her parents. Her friends teased that she was the mayor in all but name, and by the end of the day, the mayor himself awarded Evelyn a community medal, making the crowd erupt in applause. Henry stood at Evelyn's side throughout, proud and quietly supportive. After the festival, they walked home hand in hand, both tired and exhilarated. "You've given this whole town new energy," Henry told her, pressing a gentle kiss to her cheek. Evelyn smiled, marveling at how deeply she felt seen and cherished. Meanwhile, Lisa and Martin, watching Evelyn's star rise, came to a deeper understanding of their mother's transformation. Lisa began volunteering at her children's school, inspired by Evelyn's example. She even joined the book club at the library, sitting beside her mother and learning to value her as a peer, not just a parent. Martin, too, found new perspective. He organized a Saturday soccer league for neighborhood kids and started helping at the animal shelter with his own children. Family gatherings were no longer last-minute rescues for crises but planned occasions for genuine togetherness. Martin's kids asked Evelyn to teach them painting. Lisa invited Evelyn to a mother-daughter cooking class, and everyone pitched in during holidays. There was less neediness, more respect. One chilly October evening, Evelyn hosted a harvest supper, her house brimming with friends and family. There was music, lively conversation, and the glow of candles against the windows. After dinner, Martin stood and raised his glass. "To Mom, thank you for showing us that life doesn't end when the nest empties. Sometimes, that's when it finally begins." Evelyn looked around the table at the faces that had once taken her for granted, now shining with gratitude and pride. She realized her journey had become a shared one. Her courage had given her children the freedom to change, too. Later, as she cleaned up with Henry and her grandchildren, Evelyn felt a quiet joy settle in her heart. The days of being called a burden were long behind her. She was not just needed, she was wanted, admired, and deeply loved. That night, she wrote in her journal, "What once felt like loss is now abundance. My family knows my value. But more importantly, so do I." Winter's first snow dusted Silverwood in white, but Evelyn's house glowed warm with life. The year's end brought a flurry of invitations, community dinners, a holiday choir concert, and, most special of all, an offer to serve as honorary chair for the Senior Center's Winter Gala. Evelyn accepted, honored and delighted, her friends cheering her on as she delivered an inspiring speech about second chances and the power of reclaiming one's story. Lisa and Martin's families joined her for the gala, mingling easily with Evelyn's friends and neighbors. There was no longer a gulf of misunderstanding or resentment. Instead, genuine affection and respect wove through every conversation. Evelyn watched with pride as her children made new friends of their own and her grandchildren helped set up tables, carrying themselves with a confidence that reminded her of her younger self. The holidays were spent together, not out of obligation but true desire. Lisa and Martin organized a Christmas potluck, insisting that Evelyn bring only her famous spiced apples and her sparkle. The meal was loud and joyful, with old traditions honored and new ones born. Henry reading a Christmas story to the children, Martin and Evelyn dueling over a gingerbread house contest, and Lisa leading everyone in song. After the celebrations faded and the new year dawned, Evelyn reflected on all she had gained. Her home was open, her days purposeful, her heart full. She maintained her boundaries, giving freely but never from emptiness. Her family reached out, not to demand, but to connect. Her friends remained steadfast, her community ever grateful. At the Senior Center's Winter Gala, as music played and laughter filled the air, Evelyn was approached by a young woman she'd mentored through the painting class. "You showed me I could change my life," the girl whispered, eyes shining. Evelyn hugged her, realizing the true extent of her impact, one that stretched beyond family, echoing through all the lives she'd touched. That night, sitting by her window with Henry's hand in hers, Evelyn penned her final journal entry for the year. "I was called a burden, but I became a blessing. My worth was never lost, only waiting to be seen. Now I live not for others' approval, but for the joy of each day and the hope I can pass on." As the snow fell quietly outside, Evelyn closed her journal, content. She knew her journey would inspire others long after the pages ended.